Hey there, this is Small Fish, Big Pod, the entrepreneurship podcast for women who are building and growing their dream business and the life that goes along with it. I'm your host, Rhiannon Loudon, brand and content strategist, photographer, and small biz mentor. I run two small businesses, Rhiannon Neal Photography and Small Fish Brand Co., all while taking care of two tiny humans, two rescue pets, and working on renovating our Victorian terrace here in Glasgow. I'm here to help you navigate through all the challenges of entrepreneurship and the plate juggling that goes along with it. If you are here for open and honest business chat, no sugarcoating, real life experience, inspiring stories, and tips and advice, you're in the right place. Let's do this. Hey there, thanks for joining us for another episode of Small Fish, Big Pod. Before I get into my interview with today's guest, I just wanted to give you a little bit of a guide to what to expect on this episode. So today I am speaking with Elaine of Clear Mountain Decluttering. And when I first came across Elaine's work through a networking event, she came to one of our Small Biz Big Chat events. I kind of assumed that most of what she did was very physical. Declutter sounds like somebody coming in to organize and declutter your workspace or your home, and that is a big portion of what Elaine does. But what I have learned in getting to know her a little bit and then in interviewing her in this episode is that so much of what she does is about changing behaviors and changing habits and helping you confront some of the reasons behind the way that you do these things, and also giving you the tools so that you can implement some of the strategies that she works with you on into other areas of your life. So today's chat is all about getting organized and organizing your life. And that is both the physical and I guess the mental side of that as well, because as small business owners and freelancers, we wear a lot of hats. Most of us juggle a lot of things. And it's really hard to feel organized. It's definitely something that I am not an expert at. I am not much of a routine person. I am very spontaneous. And I think part of the reason I was drawn to self-employment is because I knew that every day would be different. I knew that I could shape my business the way I wanted and grow my business at a pace that I wanted. And I very much liked being in control and not having to follow that very routine 9 to 5, come in, do a specific job. And I imagine a lot of you are very much the same. But on the other side of that, I have to admit out loud that I am not always the best at being organized. And I think working from home makes it all the more difficult when we're talking about being organized in a physical sense, because most of us don't have a completely separate workspace. A lot of us are working in at the kitchen table, maybe in the living room. We now, since moving into this house, have a spare room for the first time ever, only because we've decided to put our girls in the same bedroom together. So our third bedroom is a sort of office/storage room. And it's not perfect. I finally just got it set up into a sort of creative office space. So I have about 2/3 of the room for my computer, my photography equipment, my business books, that kind of thing. And the last third of the room is what I might call the shame corner, which is all of the stuff that we're still to sort through, and all of the clutter that doesn't really have a home elsewhere in the house. And it's really hard to check out from work when you can see your work in other areas of your house. For years and years, we lived in a flat where I worked either in the hallway or in the living room. And it just felt like work was constantly calling me, reminding me of all the things that I still had to do. And it was really tough for me to enjoy my downtime. So things have gotten a little bit better since we moved into a new space and reorganized things to give a little bit of separation between work and life. But today's interview with Elaine, I share a lot of my sort of honest feelings on getting organized, on accumulating clutter, on starting jobs and not finishing them, i.e. loading up a bunch of bags with stuff to go to the charity shop and leaving it sitting in the hallway for weeks on end. And she shares a really, well, not so funny at the time, but a kind of a very poignant example of why that is a bad idea. So, without me droning on anymore about how I could do with being better organized, I will get into my interview with Elaine. Welcome to another episode of Small Fish Big Pod. I am very excited to introduce you to today's guest because she is brilliant in the area that I am terrible in. So I think it'll be a really good conversation, and I'll probably make myself look really bad, but that's okay because we are here to learn something. So I would like to introduce you to Elaine, who is a professional organizer and lifestyle coach and the owner of Clear Mountain Decluttering. Hello, Elaine.
Hello. Thanks for inviting me on.
Oh, thanks so much for coming. I'm really excited, sort of from a selfish standpoint as well, because as I've mentioned to you, this is certainly not my area of expertise. And I will be the first to admit that sort of organization and well, clutter as well. You can't see the messy parts of this room, but yes, definitely not my strong suit. So I thought to start with, can you just tell us a little bit about your business and where you're at? And if you'd like to, a little bit about, how things have progressed from when you started 16 years ago.
So I started Clear Mountain on the back of my boys had, grown up and didn't need as much attention as such. And I thought, what skills do I have that I can put together to form a business for myself? And my background is actually in sports coaching. So the coaching aspect was there. But I had worked for about 18, 19 years in education. And I'd particularly worked with children who had autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, neurodiverse challenges like that. And I thought, right, so what can I do to join all these things together? And my brain is very, very organized. So I had a look and I came up with starting an organizing business. Now, when I started it, I thought, oh, this is great. I'll just approach all the estate agents, people like that, and I'll go and kind of declutter and organize people's houses before they sell. But in fact, that it didn't happen like that. What happened was when I approached, estate agents, etc., they were a bit hesitant. Who are you? Why do you want to come in? All this kind of thing. So I had to sort of take a step back and rethink how I was going to form this business and take it forward. So I basically had a look around and I thought, right, okay, don't go that way. Just go advertise yourself on various social media platforms. And at that point, I didn't even have a website. I spoke to my friends and family. They told other people. And then I started to get jobs. And the jobs started to come in, a lot of jobs through recommendation, really. And each job I do is different. So I help individuals, families, and small businesses to organize their homes, offices, and lives. And that is basically the structure of my whole business. But the thing is that no two jobs are ever the same. So it's very, very varied what I do, and exciting because I go in and it's a different challenge all the time. But as I said, so no two jobs are ever the same. So, in terms of families, if I go into families, it's generally there's been maybe there's a divorce, maybe there's a separation, maybe there's been a bereavement in the family, and people just need a little bit of guidance and help to get things back on track. In terms of individuals, it can be anything. So I can be referred through medical practitioners who say we've got somebody who's come in who's really struggling with life. Can you go in and help because we feel that maybe their environment is impacting on, the way they're living their life. So there's that sort of avenue of stream of business coming in there, and then there's just the normal person in the street who just says, "Look, I'm just struggling with everyday life. Can somebody help?" And that's when I say, yeah, straight in there. Let's have a look at the situation. Let's see how we can simplify your life. And basically, that's my kind of motto, to try to simplify either your home, your office, or your life, and taking it forward from there. So yeah, it's a really exciting business. And as you said, I've been in business for 16 years. I started off part-time, but, quickly learned that I needed to be on this full-time. But it is difficult to take that step out of full-time employment and go and work for yourself. Um, but you have to pull your, as you say, the big girl pants on, and off you go, and take that next step. And that's what I did, and I've never looked back.
That's brilliant. And it's so inspiring, because obviously people who are listening are at different points in their business journey. It's really nice to see somebody who started their business from an idea and grew quite organically at the beginning, just from recommendations and referrals. And now 16 years later, totally thriving. So I think that's great. So thanks for sharing a little bit about how you got started as well. Um, and I think your business is so interesting because, as you say, no two jobs are the same. And I could say, okay, well, when I work with business owners, no two are the same. And that is true. Everybody's kind of at different stages. They have different types of businesses. But for what you do specifically, you're helping people with so many different things. And probably a lot of those things feed into each other. But yeah, what an interesting line of work. It's, no 2 days would really be the same.
No, and that's the thing. I mean, and it's also very nice to go in and see someone who changes throughout the sessions that I do. So I can go in, and people are generally very shy and insular, and sometimes a bit embarrassed. But as I say, there's why? No, you've done the best thing. You've asked for help, so we're going to take you through this journey, and you're going to, it's going to be better at the end. And the greatest thing for me is when I leave any premises and the person is more open, and their whole body language has changed. And I just love that. And I love people to give me feedback on how they feel afterwards. And I always catch up with them about 6 months later just to say, how are things going? And often they'll say, okay, I've had a wee, fall back into a few different bad habits. Can you come back? Can you take me through them again? And of course, yeah, that's great. And then there's the people who are like, oh, I'm on this trajectory and I'm off, and it's brilliant. It's been brilliant. So, I mean, I think it's very, very rewarding on my part. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you can really make a difference that you can see, like, even physically, you can see it right away, I'm sure. And obviously, as you're saying, you help people in so many different capacities, whether it's an individual or a family or, and with different areas of their life. But if we think kind of specifically about, say, your typical small business owner, and maybe typical is not the right word because obviously everybody's different and has different sort of obstacles and things, but how do you identify the ways in which you can help people? Because I imagine, like, so if I think about it myself, I know that sort of feeling a little bit disorganized or struggling to feel organized and on top of things is probably my biggest challenge right now, if I'm being honest. But I couldn't tell you exactly why that is or exactly which areas are the biggest struggles. So how do you, if somebody like me came forward to you and said, I know that I need help, but I don't really know how do you figure out which areas to help them?
Well, it's interesting because the word clutter means clogged, really. I think it was from an engineering term, actually. It means like a blockage or a clog. And that's actually what a lot of people feel like. They feel that they're frozen in time if you think, and all this stuff is going on around them, but how do they get out of this so-called, and I'm going to say mess, but I don't mean mess, but just challenges. So there's mind clutter, there's item clutter, and then and there's body clutter as well. So all these things impact on how we live our daily life. So for me, going in, one of the key things is that I always do a free consultation. I always go to the specific client's place of work or house or whatever it is that they're asking me to come into. And I am assessing all the time from the minute I walk in what the situation is. And most of the time, it's never totally about the clutter. It's about the things that surround that. And what I mean by that is there may be, for example, I'm thinking of a good example here. So say a small business owner like yourself gets me to come out. I don't know what's wrong. There's something going on here and I'm overwhelmed. So I am asking the question, in family life, what stage of family life are we at? So this person might say, I have young children. Right. Okay. So we've got that. I'm running my business, but I'm also looking after my parents. So you can see from both sides, apart from running the business, there is all this other activity that's going on around you running a business, say. Um, so it's not until people identify how much time they're giving to other aspects of their life that they then realize why they are struggling with the main one that's maybe the one that's bringing in their income. You know, you're running to school, you've got to pick up the kids, and suddenly the kids are off sick. You know, you've got to take them to Bali, you know, all these things that are on one side for maybe the children's side, or on the other end, it is I've got to take my parents to a hospital appointment. I've got to go and help them with the shopping. You know, do you see where I'm coming from? So there's all this that it can impact on how we are running our daily life. And then there's our own social aspects of things that we want to go out. People ask us to go out, so we feel obliged, so we go. But do we actually have the time? So sometimes it's quite nice, and I run courses with my colleagues at the University of Strathclyde and at Glasgow Clive College. And through the 4-week course that we do, in the early stages, we identify all this. And sometimes it's really good to write it down. So we do a little sort of circle in the middle of like home life, and then little circles around it. And then we ask people, pop into those circles all the other things that you do. And then people go, oh yeah, I forgot I was doing all this. So that has a big impact on how you as a person live their life and work and function in society. So that's one of the key things. What's going on around the house or the home or the business or anything like that. So that for me, that's identifying that. Then it's identifying how you're feeling in yourself, mentally, how you're feeling, physically, how you're feeling. You know, so some people might have, a lot of people I work with have like fibromyalgia or have other difficult medical conditions, which takes a lot of time in managing that, and also it keeps you low in energy. So you can wonder why you feel overwhelmed. It's sometimes because you're shattered, basically. So all these things come into play, and that's when I do that initial consultation. That's I'm extracting all that information so I can form some sort of plan in my head about how to take things forward.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess I didn't really think about how psychological your job is, and how much that has to do with it. And I imagine, just from what you were saying there, a lot of time people don't realize until they see it written down on paper or somebody like yourself sort of addresses it with them, how many other responsibilities are affecting them. Because what I've found really hard, the whole compare thing is very difficult. So I can look at other people who maybe run similar businesses or have a similar ideal client to me. And it seems to me like they're doing so much more, like they're going to all these cool conferences or winning these awards or whatever else. And I look at that and I think, oh, I wish I could be doing all these extra things. But then I stop and think, but I have a 1.5-year-old and a 6-year-old and a dog and a house that needs renovating. And I've got all these added responsibilities. And I'm comparing myself to someone who, of course, I don't know, they could have additional responsibilities, but maybe they're in their early 20s and they don't have a partner or kids or a house yet. And they have more time and they have more. So it is really hard not to do that compare thing and sort of berate yourself for not being where you feel you should be, but you're not really taking into account all of the things that you're juggling.
Yeah, and I think that on the lifestyle coaching side of things that I do, that is a big problem because people, especially with social media, and we all know that social media isn't really real, which is the other thing. you know, you know, and here's an example. You know, in COVID, we all had to go onto Zoom, right? Like we're sitting on. So, what did most people do? They cleared behind where the people would see, and they sat in a so-called super clear room. But actually, there was chaos all around them. You know, and that is
Absolutely.
social media basically. one thing that I try to get people to understand is to try not to compare themselves to other people. You are who you are. You function how you function, and you will become successful or achieve your particular goals without having to compare yourself to the other people around you. Because once you have confidence in yourself, that confidence will take you where you want to be. But a lot of people on social media will look in as you, just as you've explained, they'll say, oh my goodness, I'm not doing as well as somebody else. And that's one thing that we always say on our course is, you know, for you to grow, you have to go one step forward, two steps back. To learn, to fail, to go forward again. And without that failure, you can't go forward because you haven't learned anything. You just think that, life is, it's a joyride. It isn't. And I think that the more and more people build up, and we call this strength, this muscle of, we call it the muscle of decluttering, but actually it's this muscle of confidence, basically. So you start small and you move through your home, your office, whatever. You become more confident in the ability to make decisions, and that also transfers into your work life. So the more you do something, the more confident you become, and you're more able to tackle a situation when it comes towards you. So it's key that you don't rush ahead and finish that race and think, yeah, I've made it. But because you haven't actually learned anything along the way, and it's the learning that takes you further. Yeah, would you agree? Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. It's interesting too what you were saying about like kind of exercising that muscle and then applying it to other areas of your life because and you and I have obviously had a conversation before we've started recording this podcast, but I think I've said this to you. I feel like having kind of bits and pieces of clutter and things just feeling a little bit chaotic around me, it definitely affects my ability to work because I can sit down at my desk and I'm excited to do whatever it is that I'm working on. But out of the corner of my eye, I can see all the things that need to be done. And I feel like it's this endless cycle of like, I never make quite enough time to finish that stuff. But then it starts affecting like how productive I can be in my work and how much I can enjoy my mum time with the girls when I'm sitting going, oh, there's a massive pile of laundry. And I feel like all these things just trickle into each other. And probably, as you're saying, if you can get a handle on the most basic of like organizing a desk or something and growing it from there, it probably makes a massive difference across all those other areas.
Well, what you're describing is visual clutter. This is what we talk about, visual clutter. So visual clutter has a huge impact on us because it's a distraction. Distraction, distraction, distraction. Okay. So the more you can see, the more your eye is distracted. So in school, we would, if a child was very distracted, we had the ability to put up a little cardboard sort of three formed thing, which would stop them, stop them chatting to the person next to them, looking over at the other side, and they would focus for that little task. It's the same principle in your office for work as well. If you can have a clear office and an organized office, you are more productive, you are more focused, you work to a better time scale because you don't have, as you've said, your mind or your eye is picking up all the different things that are around you. So you're away, you've lost focus from that piece of work that you're doing. You're away over there. Yeah. So it is really, really important to, if you're working from home or you have a small office, that you try to keep it as organized and as neat as you can so that you're not having this distraction, constant distraction. And remember, it also can be, the distraction can be that phone going off or those emails coming in or all this kind of thing. So if you have a task, what I say to people when I'm helping them with, with work related stuff is that if you have a project that you have to do, you set a time scale for that. And that, I don't know if you know about the Pomodoro technique, and that is that you have like the wee tomatoes, the wee Pomodoro tomatoes, right? So you set your task into little sections.
Okay.
Okay. And you prioritize your little sections, and you start with the first and you do it, and then you have a break. Give your brain a break, so a brain break. And then, so you've achieved that. So thumbs up, you've achieved that. So then you go on to the next one. You do the same. You set yourself a time scale. You do that. You've done it. So you're building this muscle again. This is all going back to this muscle. You're building this. So you're doing it's an organizing muscle you're starting to do now. You've switched off the phone, because the phone, you don't want to be disturbed. You maybe silence the emails that are coming in. You don't answer any of those emails, because the minute you go to that email, that's you lost focus. So there was a research done recently, which I was reading, I think it was from Harvard or something like that. And it said every time you read an email, you lose 5 minutes of work or something like that, because your mind goes off your task. You read the email and then you'll think, yeah, I'll do that later. But you then have another 10 minutes to get back onto the task that you're doing. So by switching off the emails, or making the emails not in the line of vision or something like that, and you can concentrate fully, say, on 10 minutes of doing what you need to do, wow, you're much more productive. Much more productive.
Makes so much sense, because I think obviously phones are definitely a constant distraction, but I'm quite bad with it with emails. Like, say I'm sitting down to write like a strategy plan for a client or do some editing, and I see an email come in, it's really tempting to just click it and go, oh, but that's a new inquiry. I should just get back to them right away in case they're anxious. And it's so distracting. And I've listened to quite a lot of podcasts about these kind of things, productivity, and because I feel like that's the area I struggle the most with. And I hadn't heard the Pomodoro method, but I've heard a few people saying with emails specifically, check them in the morning and check them after lunch, and that's it. Like, other than that, even shut the email down if you need to, or silence notifications. And it makes so much sense, but I feel like this is a struggle for so many people, distraction.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that the person who sends the email, if you think about it, they're not really expecting you to reply straight away, because they know you're as busy as them. So it's pressure we put on ourselves to answer that email. Or it's different if it's an inquiry, by phone that you need. And if you're a company that's producing something and it needs to go out at a certain time, I get that. But in general, like, for example, if you're writing a strategy or something like that, you need to be focused on that, because you want to give the best to your client. But if you're actually distracted, you're not really giving your best, because you're taking another 10 minutes to come back to what you were doing. So it is putting those blinkers on and sitting down and going, right, okay, I don't need to be on this for half an hour, but I do need to do this section for 10 minutes, you know. And then if you want to go back and check the emails after that, fine. But the concentration needs to be there. And this sort of setting up this muscle of organizing where, a lot of people like go in and they've written a to-do list and it's got about 10 things on it. They are never going to reach number 10 in a day. No way. So again, what I say is put 3 things on your to-do list and do them. And if you do them, great. Put another 3 on. But don't make a great big list. It's like making a great big shopping list and going out and then being distracted in the shops and coming back and going, oh, no, wait a minute, that was on my shopping list, but I haven't got it. Because you've lost focus, basically. Yeah. So these are sort of things that a small business, if they were put in place at the start when you're starting your business, and that is your way of managing your office hours, wow, it can make such a difference. Can really do. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is also interesting to me because, well, I think it's something a lot of people struggle with. And I don't know if it's like, I'm sure it's not just a female thing, and I don't want to gender stereotype, but it seems like so many women struggle with this. And I don't know if it's just because of all the plate juggling, and whether you have kids or not, it's that role as a caregiver or a role as, I don't know if it's that, or if it's a personality thing, or where it comes from. Maybe this whole idea that like women should always be able to multitask, and we've like taken that kind of to heart. But it makes so much sense to kind of have a more manageable to-do list, and say, as you're saying, you don't have to say I'm going to sit and do this one thing for half an hour or for my whole day, but to break it down like that so that you get the stuff you need to do done, and then you can have 5 minutes to check your email or check social media or whatever.
Exactly. And gender wise, I don't know, maybe it is a bit more. Certainly as mothers, we juggle a lot when we are not at work. So we are thinking about that when we are at work. And I think that's the balance. So this life work balance that we talk about. And it's not switching off from your family life, but it is sort of focusing in and concentrating on what you're doing at that point. Um, and if you have a disorganized family life, then you are pulled constantly to, oh my goodness, I should have done that washing. Oh my goodness, what time do I need to take the children to X, Y, and Z? Oh, I need to take, Granny to the doctor. We are pulled to all these things, but that's where a good diary system can come into play. Setting up your diary at the beginning of the week, getting everything in, so that you know where everything is in your working day. Because a lot of people don't use a diary or don't use a family organizer, and then they wonder why they've missed X, Y, and Z. And then they're running, oh, I need to go, and they're running all over the place. And that's when they bump the car because they're not thinking properly when they're driving, or they arrive late for soccer practice or football practice or rugby or whatever it is, because it's not scheduled, if you like. But having a family planner is a great idea, because the family stuff goes in. And I found a great app that I'm using with some clients just now, some lady clients who have ADHD. Now, this is an interesting one, okay? That some research has shown that there's showing to be a lot of ADHD women at the moment, and it's not a new thing. It's just that ladies tend to mask ADHD till menopause or till they have a baby, or these areas when hormones are flying around, okay? And it becomes very difficult to mask their ADHD. So at the moment, I'm working with a lot of ladies with ADHD, and they just say, I'm so totally overwhelmed. So I found a lovely app. It's called Structured, and you can pop all your different things that you're doing into it at the beginning of the week, and you can actually copy and paste all your different, regular things in, especially for ADHD people, because they find it like when they get up in the morning, oh my gosh, what have I to do? So I've got 3 different people I'm using it with: a young person, a middle-aged person, and a person slightly older. And I'm kind of doing a kind of bit of research on this, how it works with them. But something like that, using an app or using a family organizer that both parents can use and granny can use, that you can all link into, so everybody knows what's going on, is a great way to keep family life and work life under control.
The ADHD thing is super interesting. So I've been doing a lot of reading up on this myself, because I don't want to be sound like I'm jumping on a bandwagon or self-diagnosing anything, but quite a few of my friends and other business owners that I know have been diagnosed with it. And it's interesting because through the diagnostic process, pretty much all of them were told that a lot of women, or people, I guess, but because, as you're saying, women sort of present differently, and that's why it often wasn't identified when they were younger. A lot of people end up going into non-traditional career paths who have ADHD because they struggled so much to fit into that. And I've always felt, I did the office 9 to 5 thing. And everybody always said to me, oh, you'll like routine. Like once you get to university, once you get your first job, and I've always shied away from routine. I always am quite rebellious about it, and I don't want to have everything scheduled in. But I've realized now, if I schedule in, especially things like workouts, things that I could skip. So I'm not going to skip client meetings. I'm not going to skip a photo shoot that I'm booked for, but I'll definitely skip things that are for me. So scheduling things in like workouts have mean that I actually go, because I treat it like an appointment. And that obviously could then trickle down, as you're saying, if you schedule everything in, and then you can look at your day, and instead of starting off going like, oh, totally overwhelmed. I have a million things to do and I don't know what I'm going to get done today or tomorrow. You've got the plan in place. So you've already taken away the hardest part and now you just can sit down and start.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want a life full of, like totally planned. Obviously, we want to be spontaneous and things like that. But if it's something that can help you to live a more organized life and less stress, because let's face it, this all means stress.
Yeah.
And how does stress present itself in your body? Disease is what
Oh,
happens,
well.
mental health. It comes like this. Overwhelm becomes stressful, and and we hold things in our body and then we wonder why we're ill all the time, or we can, there's a great book called The Artist's Way, and it's the lady talks about scheduling in her me time. She puts it in her diary like it's like a date with herself, is what she calls it, I think. And it is right. If you can't have your time alone to recharge, how can you function? How can you keep going? You just and lots of women and men, total and utter burnout is what happens. And then they're not working at all, or their business fails because they're just going at it too hard. And we have to have this work life balance. We have to. So, the problem I think nowadays with running your own business is that you feel you need to be open 24/7.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you don't, you don't, you don't, basically, you don't, you know. You need to have your relaxation time. You need to have your family time. You need to be taking your holidays without your phone, without your emails, because that is the time when your body, lifestyle wise, recharges so you can come back and do a great job and run your business effectively when after you've had the holiday. This carry on of going on holiday, and I'll take both my phones, I'll take my work phone and my personal phone. Oh, crazy, crazy. So I try 110% to tell people to have this downtime. You have to have downtime in the day. You have to have absolute downtime at night. Your life and work must be separated. It must be separated, especially if you're working from home and you're running a business from home. Because home life merges into work life merges into home life, and then we wonder why we're overwhelmed. It has to be separated. So it has to have a time scale for one and a time scale for the other. It also needs to be that maybe your office, you try to look to put your office in some wee space where you can close it. If you haven't got a room to do it in, then it's in a space where you put your computer switches off, you cover it or something like that, so that you are not visually seeing that. You're not tempted to go back to, I'll just check my emails, or because this is total overwhelm. It is really, and people totally underestimate the value of drinking water all day. Well, what does that do? It feeds the brain, keeps you hydrated, feeds the brain. People don't realize how much that impacts on their day. Same with not going out for a walk at lunchtime or eating the right thing. This knock-on effect for you running your business. It's all interlinked, and people do not link it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it is so hard. Like this is my other struggle, other than feeling a little bit like disorganized and overwhelmed. And I think lots of women can relate to this. It is the work-life balance thing. And I think that's so hard when you're self-employed. Like when I used to work in a sort of more formal office job, not that I never, obviously if there was a big project going on or something challenging I was dealing with, it's not that I never thought about it when I was at home, but it felt very separate because I had very specific working hours. And when I left the office and I came home, that was my time. And now I find, obviously I work from home, but I'm out and about like doing shoots and meeting people. And similar to you, you're working on, location and meeting people in their homes. But I find it really hard to not, say we get the girls to bed, we do the dishes, the dog gets his second walk of the day, it's 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night. we're tired and I want to relax. I want to read a book or, watch something on TV with my husband. But I'm always sitting thinking, oh, but I really would have liked to get that other thing done today. And I go back on the computer and I know that that's not healthy. And I feel a bit embarrassed to admit it, but I'm terrible at work-life balance and I'm trying. I'm trying to get a little bit better and have boundaries. We went camping this past weekend and I did not look at my phone the whole time. I did take some pictures on it, but I didn't check my work emails. I didn't check messages. And it was great. It felt really freeing. It was nice to be somewhere where the reception wasn't great. So even if we were tempted, it would have been difficult. And I think, I don't know, I felt quite recharged this morning. I felt, and I love what I do. So it's not that I don't feel excited to start a work week, but I felt today like it was easier to get started with a busy day because I had had a break. And I think I just need to remember that and try and keep that on board and not give in to that temptation to just fill every spare hour with work, because there's always more you can do. Like my to-do list is never going to be completely gone because there's always things that I want to grow or expand upon, and I think it's getting used to that idea that like, okay, my work day's done. Like I've put in my hours, I've put in a good effort today. That's okay. I don't need to then fill my only spare hour at night with work as well.
Yeah, I mean, the phrase I use, less is more. And that's as simple as that. Less is more. So doing what you can in the space of time that you have set aside for it, and then going and having your family life. People totally forget that this is just, it's so impactful. For me, I'm getting people send emails at all different, especially for the business I'm in. A lot of people send emails in the middle of the night because that's when they are so stressed. That's when they're not sleeping. They've suddenly thought, right, okay, I really need help. So they'll send an email. When I see it in the morning, it's coming in at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, things like that. So, for me, if I was to answer that email, that's crazy at that time. So, for me, it is my working day is 9 till 5 on the days that I'm working, 9 till 5. I then have my evenings, and I'm lucky because my boys are adults, so that's fine. But I have other responsibilities now. We have a grandchild, we maybe go and help and things like that as well. But our our downtime is when I think the most. I am the clearest, and when we walk every weekend as much as we can, out in the forest, things like that. When we are walking, my husband and I, that is when we do all our planning. That is because our mind is open. We're relaxed. It's clear. We're in the forest. If you're in the forest, there's scientific research that when you're out walking, your brain is picking up on all of the undulations and colors and smells of when you're out and walking, and this is what feeds your creativity. So that suddenly you'll have a creative idea. Like we were walking, and we were like, oh, let's do the bathroom and let's do this. Now, if we've been sitting in the house or at our desks, we're not going to think of that.
No.
So if you're a business owner and you're wanting to think of different ideas, taking that downtime is actually very, very effective. Really, really effective. That you go away from the office, you go away from wherever you are, your home or whatever, and you start to relax, and that's when the creativity will flow.
Yeah, I think there's something to that because I've started. So when I drop the little one off at nursery, I take the dog for a walk. So it's about 20 minutes to walk to her nursery. And then we've got a park really close by. So then we'll walk along to the park and do a big loop of the park and get home. So by the time I've done that, I've done an hour of walking in the morning. Dog's happy because he's had his walk. And so I normally don't start work till about 9:30, 10 o'clock by the time I've done that. But since I've started doing that, it's actually helped me a lot because I'm more of a night owl. I tend to feel more creative at night. But somehow that kind of getting outside and getting the walk done. And as you say, it's like, you're walking through this lovely park and it does kind of almost relax you and open up your mind. And then for me to sit down and do like content creation or writing or work on somebody's strategy, I feel like I'm in that creative mindset. So there's got to be something to that because that's made a big difference for me to feel focused in the morning because that's always been a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, because a lot of people just get up, have a coffee, fill themselves with caffeine, and then try to start, work. what about swapping out the caffeine for maybe a decaffeinated drink and just having a walk around the block? That might be enough, because it's the stimulating of our body as well. The stimulating of the muscles, which, the blood flow, all that's all plays a part in how productive we are, how focused we are, how creative we are. So all these things, all these lifestyle things, these lifestyle changes that we can make, they're very, very small. And not, and then that gives us, at the end of the day, we're tired, so we sleep better. So, and in a, especially for sleep. So let's talk a wee bit about sleep, because a lot of people find that they are lacking sleep because their minds are racing, etc. So meditation, I don't know if you're into meditation, but a 5-minute meditation using an app if you need to. I mean, there's the Calm app, which do 5 or 10-minute meditations, but something like that, listening to a guided meditation just to bring yourself down after the day, or sitting having a coffee somewhere, or if you want to do it in the day. Meditation is a great thing. It's great. It just calms that whole body down, your mind down from all these racing thoughts, and again, it opens the mind. So especially if you're particularly thinking about, you're maybe on a task that you're finding a wee bit difficult, so you set the time limit for that, and you're still sort of struggling after the 10 minutes that you've set it, walk away, get yourself to a nice window or something like that with a hot drink or something that you like, and just sit and do, a 5 minutes of breathing. That's just fueling the brain again, but it's also calming, your system down. In terms of the morning, you're waking up that vagus nerve in the morning by doing a few stretches and a few, rubs, etc., things like that. That again stimulates the body. But going to bed at night, see this sitting on your mobile phones and the screen time and all that, it has a huge effect. But also what has an effect is how clear your bedroom is.
Interesting.
Right. So if you have, say, a messy bedroom that you're stepping over stuff and going to bed, what have we got there? We've got visual clutter, haven't we? Going to bed. It's the same as we talked about earlier. So if you had a routine where, before you went to bed, it was a quick 5-minute tidy up, you got everything back in the wardrobes, etc. When you go to bed, you feel much calmer. The air is much clearer because you haven't got stuff lying about. So the air isn't being the feng shui. If you're into feng shui, it's clearer for the movement of air around your room. So you sleep in a deeper sleep. But more importantly, when you wake up in the morning, your first, look at around the room, it's not visual clutter. Boom, you started the day clear. So that has an impact on how we function first thing in the morning. Also, if you have in your bedroom, if you have things piled up above head height, subconsciously, that can make you feel overwhelmed. So on top of wardrobes, etc. If you have lots on top of wardrobes, piled in corners, things like that, if they're above head height, subconsciously, there's medical research that can make you feel overwhelmed as well. So if anybody's struggling with that, I would encourage them to have a look at their bedroom.
It's really interesting how much all of this ties together. And I think what I'm gathering, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm gathering from kind of what you've shared, because you've shared bits and pieces of sort of tips and advice as we've been talking about these different areas. But I guess in my head, when I feel like there's kind of clutter everywhere, like it's not, I wouldn't say I'm some sort of a hoarder or, I don't think it's that bad. But there are definitely, things that need to go to the charity shop, and there are things that I've set aside for this friend who's having a baby, and there's definitely, stuff in every room that is extra clutter that doesn't need to be there. And I feel like I have finished jobs, and so there's all that going on, and then I'm really busy with work, and I'm struggling to fit in all the stuff with the kids. So in my mind, I feel almost like everything is just overwhelming and chaos, and it seems impossible to fix it. But from what I gather just from our chat, you think that if you can sort of start to make small changes and spend a little bit of time every day and maybe try and be a little bit more sort of organized in terms of how your time is planned out, that can be enough to start a sort of positive knock-on effect.
Absolutely. And I use my saying is the power of five. So 5 minute declutter every day.
Okay.
Start with a 5 minute declutter. Now, that might be that in the kids' room, you do 5 minutes just picking up the stuff, the toys that are lying about. Ideally, we want them to pick them up. But until we teach children to tidy, we teach them to clean because they know how to clean themselves, wash themselves and that. But often we don't teach them how to tidy because we think it's quicker for us to tidy up for them. But actually, if you think about it, when they go to nursery or to school, there is a tidy up time. So we can always have a tidy up time at home. Okay, so there's the first thing, and make it fun, you know. But a 5 minute declutter, so a sweep around the room at the end of the night and just looking what's in this room that doesn't belong here, that doesn't belong in that room. Take it to where it belongs. Boom, 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 boom. Because often we've got in our living room, we might have some mail, we might have some paperwork, we might have items of clothing, something from the cups from the kitchen. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So at the end of the night, a 5 minute clear up, 5 minute declutter is that we're taking everything that doesn't belong here back to where it belongs. So there you are. There's a first thing.
Yep.
But if you did that with your desk at night, if you're a business owner, you do a 5 minute clear up of the desk or around your desk or in the corner or whatever, so that when you're ready to come and start work in the morning, you're starting with a clear space. Clear space, clear mind. Boom, more productive. Yeah.
No, that makes so much sense. And I really like that idea too of you're right. If you wake up in the morning, well, you go to bed at night and the last thing you see is mess or clutter or whatever. You go to sleep like that. And then you wake up and then in the morning, you've already got all the stuff in your head that you need to do that day. And then you look around and your space is a mess. I mean, it does make sense that these things would all sort of exaggerate how you're already feeling. So I love this idea of the 5 minute thing because that feels more manageable. I kind of think, oh, it's going to take me 4 hours to get this room totally organized and get rid of stuff and get to the charity shop. And I don't have 4 hours, but I do have 5 minutes. I think everybody has 5 minutes. Even if it's 5 minutes less on your phone or 5 minutes less of Netflix or whatever. So I really like that idea. And I really like the idea what you were saying too about the 3 item to-do list. And if you get through the three, then add three more. But I think yes, the idea of making these manageable tasks rather than setting these extremes of like, I'm going to completely organize this room and get rid of all the stuff I don't need. And it has to be done today. And if I don't do it today, I fail, then I'm going to fail. And it's not a nice feeling. And I think that's probably how people like, and I think it's definitely true for me, where it falls into a place where then there's loads to do because I've almost set myself up to fail. I've not set it up in a way that it's manageable or like I'm going to be able to do it.
Exactly, exactly. So let's just take, as you said, stuff that needs to go to the charity shop. Okay, so I had an experience a few months ago where someone had done that and got lots of bags ready to go to the charity shop. They had then tripped over the bags. They hadn't taken them to the charity. They tripped over the bags and broken their arm. So that made everything worse.
Of course.
So in terms of taking stuff, if you have decluttered it and it's in a bag to go to the charity shop, here's the tip. You have a 24-hour window to get that to the charity shop. And if that means the minute you've decluttered it, you put it in your car, you do that.
Yeah.
Because you'll always be passing one of those charity bins if you're going to the supermarket. If you've got clothes, you can pop them in there. If you can't go to a charity shop, if it's not opened at the time, just make sure the next time you go out, you take it in a small bag and you pop it in. But you have to have this 12-hour window or 24-hour window because they will lie and they will lie and they will lie. The same goes for things that have to go to friends. If you're going to give it to your friends, set the intention to do it. It's basically that. If this is going, it doesn't matter if I have to give them 3 little bags at different times, at least it's going out the house. And this is where the problems form, right? So people declutter and they declutter into another pile, which then sits. So you have the clutter. And then we have what we call the doom bags. And the doom bags are a bag which is full of stuff, and then it just moves from room to room, the doom bag. Often the doom bag is full of paperwork, which is the other
Oh,
big
yeah.
thing. But it just moves from room to room. I've filled that bag, and I've got it out there. So I'm just going to put it over there, and then it goes from there to there. Do you know where I am? Yeah, yeah. So if you're setting an intention to declutter a small area, make sure you declutter it fully and get it out the house.
Got it.
Ideally to recycling. If you can't put it to recycling, into your rubbish bin. And if it's going to charity, it needs to go within 24 hours.
I love it. Great tips. And I think so. You've shared, I think, quite a few really good tips for people to get started or kind of start like getting their mind on track to these things. Now, tell me if somebody is in a position like maybe kind of how I'm feeling, where it feels like a little bit too much for me to do myself, or I feel like I have a lot of, I guess, work in this area that I could perhaps use a little bit of coaching or help with. Can you maybe just quickly talk us through like how it works when you work with someone? You already spoke about coming in and sort of assessing, but what happens then when somebody books you?
So I think while I'm assessing someone, I'm working out what they could cope with in session wise, hour wise. So I don't do any more than 3 hour slots because people cannot focus more than 3 hours. So it can be less than that, but it won't be any more than that in one session. And in that session, I would be starting with the most prominent room that would make the biggest impact for the clients. Okay. With the hope that once I've shown them, or we've worked together to do that room, that hopefully they would be able to go on and do some other rooms on their own or areas on their own. So we would start in the corner of a room and work clockwise around the room. Now, sometimes a lot of people get distracted, as we have already spoken about. So what I would do is get a sheet and cover all the rest of the area. We would only be working in one area, okay? And when we're working on an area, we are categorizing and sorting. So we've set up categories. So we're bringing together like with like. So, for example, let's think of your office, right? So in your office, we are looking, let's say the office is a bit messy. So we're looking at anything that's stationary altogether, anything that's paperworky altogether, if it's books or whatever together. You with me? So there's these categories, and we get everything into those categories, and then we declutter from the category.
Got
So
it.
once you have gathered everything, so if you're thinking of your home office, once you've gathered everything together, and you can maybe, if you've got space on the floor or a box, boxes or whatever, into that. So all stationery, all paperwork. And you're not sorting the paperwork yet, you're just gathering it, right? Gather, 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 like with like. And then you start to go through each category on its own. Because if you're trying to do it as you go around the room, you're going to get distracted. You're going to say, I don't want to do this anymore. You're not, you lose focus. I've had enough of this. So it'll never get done. But once you've categorized your items, then you can declutter from each one. And when you're decluttering from each one, you are looking for what is something that I need at one end of a scale. I really need these highlighters, stationery. I really need these highlighters there, but I don't need those silly ballpoint pens at the other end. So this is called a clutter scale. And every time you then take something else out, you go, is it nearer what I need, or is it nearer what I don't need?
Yeah.
Okay. If it's something you don't need, it's going into the bin straight away or can be recycled. So you're only left with the stuff that you need. And only when you do that from all your categories do you then look at how am I going to organize this in a manner that works for you specifically. Because I could go in and think, oh, I know how to organize this room. And I often do go in and think, I could organize this room in 5 minutes. But that might not be suitable for that particular client. I have to establish, how does this client work? What do they need around them? What's the best place to put this stuff, and how is it going to be better? One example was I worked for a group who did it was outdoor things that they did. So they needed areas to store outdoor equipment in their office, but they also needed to store their paperwork, they need their documents, all this stuff. So I had to look at the areas of the room which was the best places for this. So obviously the documents went into upright files. And I'm going to say this because this is really key when you're doing your home office. If you put something on your desk and it's horizontal, you have a tendency to put more on. You are drawn and you want to put more and more and more on it, don't you? But if it goes into a file vertically or into a box vertically, you're more likely to organize it when it goes into that area, okay? So if it's flat, it'll encourage more and more and more. If it's vertical, it won't. If it's horizontal, it will encourage it. If it's vertical, it won't. So think about that when you're doing it. So paperwork would go into, the horizontal files. But also I had to make sure this was all bulky equipment. So it had to be able to get it out of the office very easily. So we had to put it in plastic boxes so you could see it. We labeled the plastic boxes, etc. So it's how it works for your specific company, how you need your office to look, etc.
So the idea then is you kind of help people work through like an initial space, a room or whatever. And the idea being that as they work their way through it, they're actually picking up the skills that they could then go and do the rest of their house. But obviously you're there for support if, like you say, when you follow up in 6 months or whatever, and they go, actually, I'm still struggling with this, or I could use a hand with this, which I think is quite good because obviously you have that relationship. And while you've given them the skills, it's the whole thing of you can always teach someone something, but they're never going to be as good as somebody who specializes in it, which is so it's nice to kind of have that opportunity to come back. And I guess too, then how does it work when you talk about this sort of lifestyle coaching? Because that's obviously a sort of more well-rounded. So how would that work then?
With that, again, it's more me finding out psychologically what is happening with this particular individual,
Mm-hmm.
what has happened, how they're feeling now, how we're going to take things forward. So it might be habit changes in that sense more than physical things. I worked with someone recently who unfortunately had got themselves into a wee bit of a state and was like having like a kind of shopping addiction type thing. So they were buying, but they were never using. They were just putting in a cupboard. And the buying was to make them feel better. So we had to examine that. Why are you buying? What's behind this? And at that point, if there's something that I can't help, then it's my duty to refer you on or to push you in the direction of a health professional that can help you in that sense. But if it is something that I can help you with and work through, then I would be doing sort of regular updates. So maybe we'll only be doing an hour of lifestyle coaching, where I'm going in and just we're talking more, we're looking at solutions, we're finding out what the real problem is here and how we might be able to put some lifestyle changes or lifestyle habits, more positive lifestyle habits into place. And that's the kind of coaching side of things that comes from my coaching background, but yeah, they are definitely shorter sessions. And sometimes I do them over Zoom, but I like to do them with the person in the room because I feel body language wise, I'm looking at that and seeing how people feel, and people are more relaxed and they're in their own surroundings and all this kind of stuff. So in terms of that, that's how that would work. So actual physical help could be 2 to 3 hours for items, but coaching maybe just an hour is probably enough.
That's really interesting, though. I think I didn't quite realize, I guess, how those two things tie together. So, if it's somebody who's just feeling like they've got too much clutter in their home, and I'm sure there is more to it, because obviously these kind of behaviors come from somewhere, and probably a lot of us have no idea, where it comes from, but it's there. So you can help with that physical stuff and help people develop the skills. But then if somebody's looking for a little bit more I don't know what the right word is, sort of like a real well-rounded, like where it really sort of applies to different areas of their life, then you're able to sort of offer the coaching and the psychological side too, which I think is probably something that a lot of, especially business owners who are feeling a bit overwhelmed and disorganized and sort of, I don't know. The word I always go back to is chaos, because I feel like life is just chaos with small kids and a business, and especially with this house reno and stuff too. It's I think for anybody who feels like they're juggling a lot of plates, whether they have kids or not, as you say, whether they're caring for parents or feeling disorganized is like a huge hurdle to try and get over, and to try and do it yourself is really tricky.
And you said the word chaos there, and how we say that is can't have anyone over syndrome, chaos. And it is, if you say to people, okay, so you're feeling, and they would say, no, I don't have anybody to the house, or I can't have anybody to the house, or so it is impacting on them. But in general, I think it is all interlinked. Most 110% is interlinked, and sometimes by just changing someone's living environment, it can change how they feel inside, and it can make them feel so much better that they can progress into doing something else. And at the moment, it's a lot of people are like, I don't know where my career's going, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know if I'm in the right job, and all these things, and the house is a mess and the kids are playing up and all that. But what that is they're feeding off you. If you're not feeling great, the kids play up because they're feeding off, that way. We've all had that, we've all had
Yeah.
times like that. So if you feel good in yourself and confident in yourself, then you are confident to deal with what's thrown at you from the kids or whatever. So that's where mindfulness comes into play, exercise. You and I both know Miriam. Miriam's a great, exercise and well-being coach. Um, you know, Having a massage or something like that, having the me time, even sitting reading a good book is a can be a help. Um, but also, if it's more than that, is seeking the right medical help. If you've got to a point where you're hoarding tendencies, then it's more than just the stuff. 110%.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, there's obviously different levels of severity, but I think it's fairly, I mean, even just speaking for like my sort of circle of friends and clients, I would say that like probably a good 90 to 95% of people struggle a little bit with this idea of clutter, whether it's mental or visible, or, I think most people have extra stuff sitting around. Most people struggle to keep their home really organized, to keep their life organized, to keep their business organized, because I guess that's also one of the challenges of entrepreneurship. You don't have a boss who's sort of holding you to deadline. I mean, you have clients and customers who are expecting things, so you to some extent, but you don't have somebody overseeing things and checking in. Is this getting done when it should? Is this organized? Is this where it belongs? It's all on you. And I think that just adds another sort of level to it. Like, you do have to really be in a place where you've exercised that muscle, as you say, and that becomes a habit. And I think probably most people could use help with some area of what you do. And it's just interesting to me, because I'll think like, I mean, I probably made it sound like my house is terrible. It's not that bad. There's a few bags over there I'm looking at as you're talking about the charity shop thing, thinking those have been there for a few weeks. So, it's not to the point like I don't feel like I can't have people over or anything like that, but it's still, even though it's not severe, it definitely affects me. Like, I can just tell when I'm sitting up in that spare room and that's where the extra stuff goes, it bothers me. And in our room we've got, yeah, stuff that needs to go up in the attic that's not been put up in the attic, and just things like that. I know that's having an effect on me, so I can imagine if the more severe that gets, it would have massive impact on your life.
And all the little things that you've mentioned there, they only take 5 minutes.
I know.
So that's your 5 minute, the power of five. This is what I'm saying. The power of 5 minutes is huge. The power of five. You're making a cup of tea and there's maybe stuff on the work surface. Your power of five comes into play. I'll just put that into that drawer, that into that drawer, done. You're in the bedroom with the kids, the stuff there. There's a couple, you're putting stuff back in the drawer in the kids' bedroom.
Yeah.
The power of five is Do you know, those little pairs of socks don't fit them anymore. I'm going to take them out and declutter. Boom. But the main thing here is simplifying your life.
Mhm.
If you have less stuff, it's less stuff to manage. So most people have too much stuff. So think when you're buying, buy quality over quantity. Really, as you're leaning forward to buy something, do I really need this? Do I really want it? Take 5 minutes, walk away in the shop and come back. 9 times out of 10, you'll say, actually, I don't really need that because it's impulse buying. If you're buying online, you put the stuff in the basket and you leave it for 5 or 10 minutes and then go back and think, do I really need it? Most of the time, you'll take it back out the basket. Yeah. Clothes wise, we sometimes, especially families and business owners who are working with families, is that they always say laundry is the worst thing, keeping on top of the laundry. Keeping on top of the laundry, it is just because we have too much stuff. If you think about it, if you've got a lot of t-shirts in the kids' room, then you don't need to wash it quickly because you've got another t-shirt you can take,
Yeah.
right? So what's the impact on that? It means that you've got huge amount to wash. But if you had nine t-shirts per kid, 9 pairs of socks, 9 pairs of pants, all that. That's what I do when I go into families. We simplify everything down so that they only have a certain amount of stuff. And then we look at how we can make it in the drawers, how we fold it so that the children can go in and find the stuff themselves. So we're building this independence to get dressed, which takes away from, the business owner dealing with that part. You with me? So
Yeah.
the child starts to become independent, even at an early age, because sometimes I go in and do tots, chest of drawers, and I just put stickers on it where their pants are, where their socks are, and they can go in and get it. But they can also help mum or dad put the stuff back. So this is us teaching them. Because if you just have a minimum amount of stuff, you can manage it in the laundry, it dries quicker, it can back on. Yeah. If you have 20 t-shirts in the drawer, you're just going to keep using them till they've all gone. And then you've got this huge amount of laundry, which you then have to dry, iron if you iron, all this. But if you just have a small amount, it also is great for children, especially for managing their sizes. Sometimes they've grown out of stuff very quickly. So going in and making sure that 5-minute declutter is, does that t-shirt fit anymore? No. Do these socks fit? No. So you're doing this on a daily basis or a weekly basis when you're putting your laundry back in.
Mm.
Same with adults. Clothes is the worst thing for most families and business owners who are living and working in the home. It is the washing is the worst thing.
Well, I can relate to that one. And it
You know,
is.
we've all done that. We've all done that. I've done that,
Yeah.
when my boys. But what I did do was I thought, oh, wait a minute, this is crazy. We'll minimize everything. It also is a good thing for your wardrobe if you are a business owner, and if you have a tendency for ADHD, it is less decisions to make when you only have a certain amount of stuff in your wardrobe.
Oh, that's a good point too. I never thought of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, that is loads of helpful tips, which I feel like I should have been making a list as you were talking. I'll have to go back and listen when I edit. But no, I think that was great. And I think, you covered everything I kind of wanted to ask you just organically. You shared a lot of tips and advice as you were going through, which is great. I'll try and pull some out when I'm kind of doing the little episode blurbs so that, people get some of those key points. Because I think a lot of what you said feels more manageable than I thought it could, just because it is so much about, as you say, simplifying and starting small. And I love this power of 5 idea, because quite often I do find that I'm waiting for like a kettle to boil or whatever, and I do have 5 minutes in the kitchen. So yes, I'm going to try and employ some of these things, but I am also looking forward to hopefully working with you myself, because I think life is just busier now for most people than kind of ever before, or, and I think the whole work-life balance, it's kind of gotten forgotten in a lot of ways, even though people talk about it with this whole hustle culture of like, working 24/7, and as you say, like celebrating, oh, let's all work on vacation, and let's all, and not, it's almost like you're chastised for taking time off. It's, oh, you must not care about your business, or you must not care about success, or and I agree, it's totally the wrong attitude. So I think this is such a great topic, and we could probably chat forever about it, but
we could. My son lives in Sweden, and their life work balance is unbelievable in the fact that they do not expect you to be working at the weekends. They pay you to go on holiday. You get a bonus when you go on holiday because they want you to take the break, to recharge, to come back, because they're a small country and they need the people working.
yeah.
So, think of it like that. It's that if you've got a business and you want to keep your business going and keep it productive and manageable, and you need to take the break to
Yeah.
recharge, to bring the fresh energy back and the creativity back to your business to make it go forward.
No, I totally agree. And I think that's something probably most of us can work on, is getting around that mindset. And yeah, I always think that about countries like Denmark and the Scandinavian countries. They do seem to really have a handle on that whole work-life balance. And people are happier, people are healthier, people are like, the knock-on effect is huge. So, and I guess too, that's part of the reason of starting my own business, and a lot of people that I know, is because they hated that idea of you have to have your bum in a seat for X number of hours, and you can't get a raise if you don't, work overtime and things like that. But then I think a lot of us forget that when we're trying to grow our businesses, and we end up working more than we ever did in like an office setting. And I think it's going back to that whole, we moved out of that for a reason. Now let's, set an example for everybody else and not be a total hypocrite, which I definitely do sometimes. I think I tell people all the time, you should take a break, you should turn your phone off, and then I don't do it myself. So it's good sometimes to have that reminder. And I know that you have loads of sort of tips and advice and ideas on your Instagram. So, well,
Yeah.
tell us where to find you online. I'll pop this in the show notes as well.
Well, my website is www.clearmountaindecluttering.com. And that's there, and that tells you a bit about me, but it also tells you a little bit about. And there's some testimonials on there and some case studies for some people. But social media wise, I'm on Facebook at Clear Mountain Decluttering, and I'm also on Instagram at Clear Mountain Decluttering, and I'm on Twitter at Clear Mountain UK. I think that one is. But basically, it's the same things I'm sharing between the sort of three social media things. But I'm putting up just now. I'm doing a 30-day challenge for people to declutter an area per day, and that's quite good because people start to sort of get into the swing of it, and then they go, okay, I only need to do this today, I only need to do that today. So sometimes I do that, and sometimes I do other hints and tips. And if anybody is interested and want to have a chat, I'm absolutely open to just anybody giving me a call, and I'll just chat them through it.
That's great. Well, thanks a lot. I'll put all those links up in the show notes. And I love the 30-day challenge idea. So definitely watch out for those. And yeah, thanks again for coming on the show. That was a brilliant chat.
Okay, now thanks for having me. No, I enjoyed it. Thank you.